with John Bachman.
Thank you, Lori. Coming up in a half hour from now, we'll have much more from Scott on Vietnam behind the lines, and it's good to have Scott back with us. In other news, a Des Moines man angry that the city isn't doing much about that site on the south side where live ammo has been found. And the latest in the budget negotiations, a trying time for lawmakers and the public alike. We'll have these stories and the rest of the news at 6 o'clock.
All right, thanks, John. Speaking of race, finally, today, it was a race without the roaring engines.
Electric cars ran at the second annual Electric 500 in Phoenix, Arizona. The street-legal cars can top 100 miles per hour. Well, that's pretty fast. The race is designed to push to the limits electric car technology. The showcase the non-polluting technologies, a three-day event, also featured solar and hybrid models.
That's what we all need. Thanks for joining us. Nightly News is next. We'll see you tomorrow.
President Bush raising big campaign money, and tonight we'll show you who gets what. In California, cleaning up and counting up the cost of that big earthquake. And Saddam Hussein, how the sanctions work in his favor.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Reporting tonight from NBC News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. President Bush is in Charlotte, North Carolina tonight, raising $500,000 for his re-election campaign. And as he headed for Charlotte, the president commented on reports an Illinois executive was fired for failing to contribute to another presidential fundraiser.
I've read some allegations that concern me very much because there should not be coercion in fundraising. It's outrageous. And I pride myself on a good, clean record in this regard.
But despite the president's assurances, invitations to a dinner in his name tomorrow night specifically tell contributors not to worry about federal limits. And as NBC's Lisa Myers tells us now, that dinner and other recent developments have refocused attention on money, which is often called the mother's milk of politics. Lisa?
Tom, reforms after Watergate limited contributions to candidates to $1,000. However, both political parties are using a loophole to raise huge sums of money, called soft money. Critics say this big money talks.
February 25th, George Bush is in San Francisco to raise money. A top fundraiser complains to the president that because of the drought, the Interior Department has refused to release any federally subsidized water to California farmers. 10 days later, the president announced that billions of gallons of cheap federal water would be pumped into California aqueducts.
The change in policy came only 10 days after your conversation. You think that was a coincidence?
I certainly am not entitled to any credit, but I am happy that agriculture got some water because I think that was only fair and proper.
The decision also must have pleased James W. Boswell, who along with his company has given $125,000 to the Republican Party since 1988.
The Boswell Company operates one of the largest farms in the San Joaquin Valley that gets this subsidized water. When President Bush releases water to these growers, they are one of the biggest recipients.
And that is not the first time the Boswell Company benefited from a Bush administration decision. In 1989, the administration allowed the Boswell Company to skirt a new law intended to prevent water subsidies from going to wealthy farmers, a decision worth millions of dollars. A report by the public interest group Common Cause finds that the Boswell case is part of a pattern.
Huge campaign donors are getting special access, special influence, and special treatment. At a minimum, they're getting the appearance of influence buying, and they may well be getting more.
Since 1988, the Republican Party has raised more than $70 million in soft money. These big contributions would be illegal if given directly to a candidate, but they're legal when given to party organizations, which then can spend the money to help candidates, including the president. Most soft money comes from individuals known as Team 100, who contributed $100,000 or more. Two of the top givers, Dwayne Andreas and his company Archer Daniels Midland, $652,000. Henry Kravis and his partners at Kohlberg, Kravis & Roberts, $505,000.
The people who give that kind of money give it with the expectation of a return. And unfortunately, if the candidate wants to be reelected, he makes the return.
Although there is no way of knowing whether any contribution bought a final result, some big contributors appear to have gotten some return. Andreas and Archer Daniels Midland benefited big time from the administration's controversial decision to extend ethanol subsidies. And there is this tiny airport in Denver, Front Range Airport, which last month received a $35 million FAA grant. Who benefits? Developers owning the land around Front Range, led by publicity-shy William Lloyd Davis, who's contributed $176,000 in soft money. Howard Leach, a Bush fundraiser and member of Team 100, defends the system.
The cause and effect just isn't there. These people are contributing in substantial amounts because I believe they believe in good government. The fact that they are also involved in business or relationship with the government some other way is just a fact of life today.
Neither these Team 100 members who received favorable treatment nor Republican Party officials would be interviewed about this. The president has promised to veto a campaign reform bill which would outlaw these huge contributions. Tom?
Thank you, Lisa. And with me now is Fred Wertheimer, who is the head of Common Cause, and that is a tenacious monitor of campaign fundraising in America. Mr. Wertheimer, there is a bill before Congress to control all of this. What's going to happen to it?
Well, it's headed for the president this week, we expect. It would shut down this system. He's threatened to veto it, but there's still a chance. If he signs it, he deserves great praise. He'll bring about basic change. If he vetoes it, he'll assume personal responsibility for this corrupt system in Washington.
It's not, we concentrated here on the president and the Republicans because they are in power in the White House, but Democrats do this as well, correct?
Absolutely, and we've reported on that as well. Democrats did it in 1988. They've been doing it since then. However, Senate Democratic Majority Leader Mitchell has led the fight in Congress to close it down. The legislation will close it down. Just yesterday, on your own Meet the Press program, party head Ron Brown of the Democratic Party said for the first time he supported closing it down, so it really now is in President Bush's court.
What about those who say, listen, this is a free speech issue. You cannot restrict our ability to express ourselves through the money?
Well, it's not. I mean, the Supreme Court has made clear that when it comes to campaign contributions, because they can corrupt, because they create the appearance of corruption, they can be controlled constitutionally.
So much of campaigning is done on television these days. It is an expensive medium. What about the role of television in all of this?
Well, it's very expensive, and this legislation would reduce the cost of the television during campaigns. That's one of the things it would do.
We also want to show our audience tonight what happens to a United States senator, what they have to do in the course of a campaign. We'll show you some figures on that right now. Incumbent senators raise more than $4.5 million. That means that they have to raise $14,500 a week every week that they're in office. So they then become subject to influence as well, don't they?
Well, absolutely. And this legislation is directed at Congress. It would limit spending, cut PAC money, provide clean resources. It's comprehensive reform. It would fundamentally change the way business is done in Washington.
Fred Wertheimer of Common Cause, thank you very much for being with us tonight. In other political news today, Jesse Jackson was sounding as if he wanted the Democratic vice presidential spot or else. In two separate interviews, he said he wanted the job, hinting that he might not otherwise support the ticket. When pressed, however, later in the day, Jackson said he was misquoted and he intended no threat. When Nightly News continues in a moment, the new national campaign to catch fathers behind in their child support payments and put them in jail. And tonight's Daily Difference, a crusader against child abuse finds herself on trial.
Before we ship a new Buick LeSabre, it must meet an international standard of excellence. If it fails to meet a single electrical check, we don't ship it. If the aim of a headlight isn't true, if the seams aren't measured to the millimeter, we don't ship it. So if you buy a Buick LeSabre for its quality, you won't be missing the boat, even though it doesn't come by boat.
Fixodent Fresh. The spring water fresh feeling is reason enough to try it. And it's the strongest holding adhesive, so you'll never settle for anything less. Crisp freshness, strongest hold. Two great reasons to Fixodent and forget it.
I swim, I jog. I love junk food. Sometimes even I get constipation.
Now, Ex-Lax pills give you three choices: regular, extra gentle, or new maximum relief. Ex-Lax for regular people who sometimes aren't.
Aftershocks continue to rattle Northern California today. Total property damage from Saturday's big earthquake and Sunday's aftermath estimated now at about $51 million. 95 people were injured. The sparsely populated area is 275 miles north of San Francisco, and NBC's Diana Karicki is there tonight.
How many more pictures do you think you have in the paper, Lisa?
None. People in these small towns gathered on street corners today to enjoy their newfound celebrity. But more than anything else, they're mired in mundane concerns.
I hope we have hot water, because I want to take a shower. If we don't...
The Briscoe family has given up all hope of hot showers for the moment. Their house is now uninhabitable, so they've set up household for all 13 of them outside on the lawn.
My sister-in-law's little boy, he kept saying, Mom, I don't want to die, I don't want to die.
But amid all the damage and injury and fear and inconvenience, a lot of humanity is peeking through. Postmaster Bob Goins is delivering mail right into people's hands. So many homes are now tagged unsafe and are uninhabited.
A little bit rough there for a little while, but mail's got to go through, you know.
These boys were right in front of the post office when its windows blew out during the quake.
Scary, huh?
Yeah. They almost hit us when they were driving by and stuff.
Most schools in the area are closed today. The boys' school converted to a Red Cross shelter.
It still hurts.
It still hurts.
It hasn't gotten worse.
But what hurts many people most is worry about what comes next. Another aftershock? More devastating damage? Beverly Gurich wonders how many more nights she and her kids can sleep in the car.
Are you guys all okay?
Yeah. I was too scared to take a nap because of the earthquakes.
Humboldt County officials today declared a local state of emergency. They're hoping California Governor Wilson and President Bush will issue similar decrees, freeing up state and federal money for cleanup and repair. Diana Karicki, NBC News, Rio Dell, California.
Life on another kind of fault line now. Hundreds of thousands of American women left to raise the kids with little or no money from the father since departed. Non-payment of child support has become a national scandal. NBC's Fred Briggs reports tonight that Massachusetts is doing something about it.
And the record stands that you presently owe an unpaid child support the sum of $16,000 plus.
Mark Bloom, a deadbeat dad who has all but ignored child support payments for his son almost 5 years.
I've never really taken it seriously.
Not until his picture made the 10 most wanted posters that went up this month in subways, restaurants, stores, and on billboards. 10 out of 130,000 Massachusetts fathers delinquent in child support payments. Bloom was turned in 2 days after the first posters came out. Since then, 4 more have been found. That's just out of the top 10. One of them, Michael Marsh, was arrested near Beaumont, Texas, and will be extradited to Massachusetts this week. He owed the most, over $52,000. Who puts out these posters? The State Revenue Department, because it's often the state that winds up paying when fathers don't.
If the payments are made, then they can stay off welfare. If the payments are not made, what happens so often is they come on welfare, and then taxpayers pay for the support of the family, and that's not fair.
All states are taking a beating from these child support scofflaws. Nationally, $14.5 billion in child support has gone unpaid, and that figure is growing by $3 billion a year. Cynthia Lovell, Mark Bloom's ex-wife, had some hard years raising her son Brock before she remarried, years of holding down 2 jobs just to pay rent.
Meals were the big thing. I went without food. Brock would go with very little food because I wanted to stretch the groceries out.
Her son, Ann Marks, is 11 now, doesn't have much desire to see his father. It wasn't always that way.
His basic question was, where is he? Why doesn't he want anything to do with me? What did I do?
In the name of the non-custodial parent?
The State Revenue Department is getting a lot of calls from deadbeat dads who haven't made the 10 most wanted list yet. It may be fear as much as guilt. As Mark Bloom said after he was found,
I'm tired of looking over my shoulder wondering what's going to happen to me, or wondering if I'm going to go to jail.
Thousands of others are wondering the same. Fred Briggs, NBC News, Boston.
On Wall Street today, stocks closed lower in advance of new economic figures. Trading today was moderate.
She was the paper's best writer. Now she can't finish a sentence without pain. She has a debilitating hand injury caused by repetitive motion. So Liberty Mutual is helping customers redesign their workstations to reduce the pain and lost work days. Because we don't want her to report a story like this ever again.
Now you can ask Angela Lansbury about Bufferin.
Angela, you've said on TV that Bufferin is effective pain relief. Is it really strong aspirin?
I'll say it is. Extra strength Bufferin's the strongest dose of aspirin you can buy. 1,000 milligrams.
Angela, how can Bufferin be so strong if it has buffers?
That's a good question. I've learned the buffers don't weaken it. They just help prevent aspirin's stomach upset. Bufferin's great pain relief.
Shouldn't you discover the strength of Bufferin? Red Devil Enamel. You can always count on its durable finish. Harder than ordinary paints, its beauty lasts and lasts. Red Devil Enamel for the finish of a lifetime.
With one of the highest resale values in its class and proven Honda reliability, the Accord truly is a safe place to put your money.
Our daily difference now, crime and punishment. Spotlight on a Georgia courtroom and a woman whose underground network hides abused children from the abusing parent. Now, she stands accused. More on this from NBC's Bob Dotson.
This little girl must look at a fake birth certificate to remember her new name. She is hiding from a man who knows her real one.
One time I remember he pee-peed on me, and then I threw up and had to go outside and get sick.
And if this would have been a school teacher or a policeman or somebody else, they'd have been prosecuted, but it was her father.
So this woman, Faye Yager, did what she has done for hundreds of such children who have not found protection in the courts. Help the girl and her mother disappear. Mrs. Yager has developed a nationwide network of volunteers who will take them in. She became famous encouraging mothers to go on TV to talk about their problems.
She would just go crazy, just burst into tears and screaming and crying and no, I don't want to go with him. He hurts me. Mommy, please don't make me go.
It all seems so necessary and good. But today, Faye Yager is in court, accused of kidnapping and cruelty, coaching kids to make up stories of child abuse.
If he hadn't touched you on your bottom, why did you say that he had touched you on your bottom?
So I can go back with my mom.
Alicia Watts says Yager held her captive for 4 days. Her mother, Myra, had sought protection in Yager's network of safe houses, then wanted out. Instead, Yager drove off with Alicia and her brother, Jared.
She said, "You're in real danger." She said, "These children have been poisoning you every day. They've been giving you cyanide, little bits of it at a time." She said that there were rituals being performed on me at night while I was asleep.
All I ever tried to do was determine the truth. Who was lying? That's all. I didn't become judge and jury.
Yager admits she is a zealot, with reason. Her first husband is now serving time for child molesting. One of his victims, she says, was their daughter, who contracted gonorrhea at age 4.
He could rape her any day, and he did. He videotaped her, he raped her, molested her every single day of her life.
Peter Bracey says those memories color Yager's opinion of all fathers, and also her group's.
They wipe you out. They just go over the top of you like a bulldozer.
That's my daughter. His 2 kids were taken underground, even though he's been cleared of all charges.
That's my son.
Faye Yager faces 60 years in prison if she's found guilty.
If I was to get convicted, everything these children say, they'd just be liars. Nobody will ever believe a child again.
The question is she telling the truth? The little ones, like always, are caught in the middle.
Well, I'll just run forever and ever until I can get safer.
Bob Dotson, NBC News, Marietta, Georgia.
Tomorrow's Daily Difference, Voice of the People. Pennsylvania votes tomorrow, or does it? Bob Kerr visits a Pittsburgh suburb where voters are turned off and asked if they share some of the blame.
In medical tests, people fell asleep faster and slept better with Unisom than without. Unisom for faster, better sleep.
Nighttime, one of the worst times for pain. Minor arthritis pain, muscle aches, pain that seems to go on. That's why you need Ultra Strength Bengay, the strongest Bengay ever. You can say goodnight to your pain with Ultra Strength Bengay.
Small businesses come in many sizes. And because they do, we've created the AT&T Partners in Business program, a choice of savings plans for all sorts of small companies. You can get discounts on the numbers you call most, or the area code, or the country you call most. AT&T Partners in Business. Choices, because one size does not fit all. Call us.
How many times I told my dad to see a doctor? He was stubborn. But the pain in his stomach just wouldn't go away. He had to go. You should have seen the relief on his face when the doctor said Mylanta. He said it was indigestion, and his kind of indigestion needed strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Oh yeah, we're gonna twist! Tater twister, big surprise! Cuts and shapes, some curly fries!
Presto Tater Twister Electric Curly Cutter. Money-saving curly cuts from fresh vegetables. Spiral cuts, too. Thrifty, easy fun.
Tater Twister!
From Presto.
Somebody put these Harvest Crisps in the wrong box.
Delicious.
Right, so what's a delicious cracker like that doing in a box that says low-fat, no cholesterol?
Beats me.
I mean, if Harvest Crisps are so good for you, how come I can't stop eating them?
I don't know, hon.
I love them.
4 executives of the Mexican oil company Pemex and 3 government officials were jailed in Guadalajara today. They face charges of negligent homicide in connection with last week's sewer explosion that killed 191 people. And in other news around the world today, the United States was sold. That is, the SS United States. The luxury liner was auctioned off for more than $2.5 million. The new owner plans to restore the 40-year-old liner. Britain has its first woman Speaker of the Parliament. Betty Boothroyd, Deputy Speaker for 5 years, one-time chorus girl. She says that she will forego the traditional wig. Afghanistan's capital rang with gunfire again today. Rival guerrilla factions ignored a ceasefire and battled for control of a country that since mid-April has been without a government. And the government of Iraq under Saddam Hussein is proving to be far more durable. Since the Persian Gulf War, Saddam has been the target of economic sanctions, but how effective have they been? NBC's Tom Aspel in Baghdad found out.
The economic sanctions are slowly but surely turning Iraq into a classic third world country, where a powerful leader rules over an impoverished population. The average wage for Iraq's 18 million people is less than $20 a month, and only a rigid rationing system enables them to eat. The middle class, its savings in worthless Iraqi dinars, has vanished, while at the top end of the scale, a tiny minority can still afford to browse in boutiques carrying designer labels from Paris and New York. They're the elite, close to those in power. And Saddam Hussein keeps them loyal, dispensing patronage and privilege. Take Yasser Hassan Sultan, Saddam Hussein's man in Kirkuk, north of Baghdad. As governor, his word is law here. People beg favors, he decides. These women need money and food stamps. Their pleas are granted. This man's son was murdered. The killers are in police custody. Can the governor assure him they'll be punished? Yasser Hassan Sultan says he'll take care of it, personally. How does he sleep nights with all that power? With one eye open, he says. Just like Saddam Hussein, whose rare public appearances are security events. The sanctions, maintained to drive him from power, have actually made him stronger, because the people are now too weak to overthrow him. Despite its defeat in the Gulf War, the Iraqi military machine was not totally destroyed, and Saddam Hussein's massive security apparatus functions as effectively as ever. And the Iraqis have an ace in the hole.
A country like Iraq, with 150 billion barrels of oil in the ground, you cannot scratch it off your calendar that easy.
They can resume pumping at any time, if Iraq agrees to sell it through the United Nations, which will siphon off most of the profits to pay war reparations.
Saddam Hussein's strategy is simple: wait it out. He thinks that the West will have to talk to him sooner or later, that Iraq and its oil is just too important to ignore. Paul Maswell, NBC News, Baghdad.
There were a couple of positive developments today in the Middle East peace talks as they resumed in Washington. Israel formally proposed Palestinian municipal elections in the occupied territories, and Syria eased travel restrictions for its Jewish citizens.
An important message for patients taking Cardizem SR.
I need a refill on my Cardizem SR.
You may want to see your doctor before your next refill, because there's a new Cardizem available, Cardizem CD.
What's the difference?
Cardizem CD should save you money, and it contains the same medication as Cardizem SR.
Can you give me Cardizem CD?
Only your doctor can change your prescription. Ask your doctor if new Cardizem CD is right for you.
Cardizem CD. Thanks. I'll ask my doctor.
Presenting the faucet. Funny thing about faucets, you might think they're all the same until you look into a Pfister faucet. Pfister faucets are, in a word, fabulous. Since they have a heart of solid brass, the fact is they hold up better and longer. No fooling. Nice, too. They're affordable. So when you're faced with getting a faucet, get a Pfister, the fabulous faucet with the funny name.
Red Lobster may have gone too far this time. A full pound of tempting shrimp overflowing your plate. Red Lobster's never offered you, whoops, so much on one plate. 10 grilled shrimp, 15 butterfly, 11 scampi. A full pound of our biggest and best shrimp for a limited time. So much shrimp with all the extras, including a doggy bag.
Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you.
Wasted time.
Too much Not enough time. The cost of parenthood. Voters are still
unemployment.
You never needed it more. A new extra-strength pain reliever made to get today's tough headaches before they really get you. 1,000 milligrams strong. Stomach guard. And the name Bayer. That should ease your mind. Introducing new extra-strength Bayer Plus. Now there's no pain you can't bear.
Well, there's another one, another tennis whiz kid, another reason to say, hey, if I had started it at that age, I could have been a contender. But in this case, she's just 10 years old, and this contender comes from a country better known for borscht than baselines. NBC's Noah Nelson.
When young Anna Kournikova goes out to play, this is how she does it.
Good. I'm stunned to see a young girl like this that has the ability to do everything on a tennis court, everything.
Her coach, Nick Bollettieri, has developed players like Andre Agassi and Monica Seles.
She's the best I've ever seen. It's almost to a point that I have to pinch myself and say, is this for real?
So far, Anna has beaten several top-seeded players in the 14 and under age division. Not bad for a little girl who came here from Russia just 3 months ago.
When I play with some maybe 15 years old, I think about what I must win, I must play hard, and I'm gonna win.
Oh, move! Get over there! Get under the level above!
Anna trains at Bollettieri's tough tennis camp in Bradenton, Florida. To Anna and the other kids, this is not just tennis school, this is tennis boot camp. The idea is to break out of the pack and show that you might have what it takes to make it as a professional. Some of the other young players here call her awesome.
She's not that big, and she hits the ball a ton really hard.
Anna first picked up a racket when she was 5. She was discovered by American talent scouts shagging tennis balls in Moscow. They brought her and her mother Alla here so Anna could become a tennis star. They've also given them a car and a luxury condominium. Anna is learning to be an American fast. People are calling her a natural. Does she believe it?
Yeah, because I know whether I can be the best.
This past weekend, she carried the crowd. But a tough 15-year-old German beat her in a local tournament. Anna still has a lot to learn. The next day, confidence unshattered, Anna was back at work. Future champions still have to practice. Noah Nelson, NBC News, Bradenton, Florida.
That's Nightly News for this Monday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Up next on your 24-hour news source,
Are Americans still alive in Southeast Asia? A contingent of U.S. senators goes to Vietnam demanding answers to those questions. I'm Scott Pope, a preview of my series Vietnam Behind the Lines coming up.
And there are still many unanswered questions concerning some live ammunition found here in the city's south side. I'm Kathy Salter. I'll have a live update coming up.
And you didn't have to be sly like these young foxes to know the weather was nearly perfect today.
And Gary's forecast calls for even warmer temperatures. All the news up next.
I remember the first time I tasted frozen yogurt. It was AE's Peach Twist. What a surprise. How could something that tasted so good be so good for me? So I tried other brands. They looked like a bargain, but they tasted like a bargain too. Artificial flavors and color, higher fat and sodium. I miss my fuzzy peaches, so I'm back. Doesn't get any better than AE.
Anderson Erickson frozen yogurt. Taste the difference.
They're all yours.
Very funny. Open the door, please, right now. Oh. Hi. Excuse me. Hello, Domino's?
Call now for America's favorite pizza feast with pepperoni, sausage, and mushroom. A medium's just $8.99.
I've got a Domino's pizza. Nobody knows like Domino's.
How you like pizza at home?
The next time you leave something behind at an Amoco service station, please make it something we can use. Your old motor oil. We'll gladly recycle it for you.
Live from WHO TV 13, where the news comes first 24 hours a day. John Bachman, Kim Kerrigan, Rick Silvestrini with sports, and meteorologist Gary Amble with the weather. This is News Center 13 at 6.
U.S. senators meeting with the General Secretary of Vietnam demanding action on the POW MIA issue and getting it. Good evening. We're glad you could be with us. Details of that high-level meeting will be coming out tomorrow in Washington.
But tonight, News Center 13 already has that information. The 5 senators, including Iowa's Charles Grassley, call the fact-finding mission a success. The delegation reports that American investigators will, for the first time, have unrestricted access to Vietnam, which will allow investigators to immediately follow up on reports of live sightings without prior approval from the Vietnamese government. News Center 13 got this information, of course, because our own Scott Pope traveled with that blue ribbon delegation.
He was the only Iowa journalist to make the trip. Scott joins us from the newsroom to begin his special series of reports, Vietnam Behind the Lines. Scott?
Kim, John, Vietnam is a country that has changed quite a bit over the past 20 years, but yet also very little. Before the war, it was, of course, 2 separate countries. But shortly after the American withdrawal, South Vietnam was overrun by the communists and today is one country. Photographer Mike Borland and I spent an entire week in the capital city of Hanoi, not only to report on the efforts of the Senate Select Committee, but also to see for ourselves what's being done on the POW MIA issue and to see how Vietnam has changed over the past 20 years. It was an eye-opening experience that you'll see all this week. We'll begin tonight with the search for clues into the fates of 2 Central Iowans listed as missing in action in Southeast Asia.
Yes, we do have a file on those cases.
Tuesday night, the most frightening part of our trip, a spot inspection of a Vietnamese prison in Hanoi, where Defense Intelligence has received reports of live Americans.
Oh.
You're just taking of me. Just me. Just me. You're taking my picture. We were not well received. Wednesday night, the war relics of the Vietnam War. The wreckage of American B-52 bombers left intact exactly where they crashed. And we'll talk with Vietnamese citizens who lived through the horrors of the carpet bombing runs over Hanoi. Thursday night, we'll take you on a tour of the American War Crimes Museum, where the Vietnamese have put American weapons, wreckage, and personal effects of American pilots on display.
Some of the Vietnamese anti-aircraft artillery looked very antiquated. This reminds me of an old John Deere tractor we'd see at home. But the artillery was very effective. This piece alone shot down 124 American aircraft during the war.
And on Friday, Vietnam Today. how the people live, their prospects for the future, and their feelings about Americans today, 20 years after the Vietnam conflict. John and Kim, of course, the big question is, are there still live Americans in Southeast Asia? We'll try to give you the best guess of the people who are closest to the situation coming up tonight at 10.
And Scott, you did get some information on one Iowan, didn't you?
Yeah, we talked to Bill Bell, who has been heading up the POW MIA investigative office in Hanoi for the past 5 years. He is considered the American expert. He told me that there is information on the Lenny Salinkio case, a Des Moines pilot who was shot down during a supply mission in South Vietnam back in 1967. That information is not available to the public, was not given to me, but he says there is a file, an investigation has been done, and it will be turned over to family members at that request. So there is some information on his case.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Scott's presence in Vietnam enabled him to get first-hand reaction from the Senate delegation touring the area.
Senator Hank Brown of Colorado and Iowa's Charles Grassley felt the mission went well, but they say pressure must be kept on Vietnam.
This is we have live sighting reports, eyewitnesses who saw people who appeared to be American POWs. We're not going to normalize relations until we have a chance to check out those reports.
It's a major breakthrough to test whether the system's working, and obviously getting this far is further than anybody would have gotten before.
Yeah. The other senators touring Vietnam from Massachusetts, John Kerry, Virginia's Chuck Robb, and New Hampshire's Bob Smith.
Again, the 5 members of the delegation looking into the POW MIA issue will release their findings tomorrow. They'll be given at a news conference in Washington. The delegation will report that American investigators now have unrestricted access to Vietnam and that approval from the Vietnamese government won't be needed to follow up on reports of live sightings. Of course, those findings will be chronicled all this week on News Center 13 with Scott Pope's series Vietnam Behind the Lines. If you'd like a more detailed preview of what Scott will be covering each night, simply call our Behind the Lines hotline at 246-5600, category 2113.
Follow up now on a story we brought you 2 weeks ago about the discovery of some live ammunition on the city's south side. City officials are still investigating the find, and they don't view it as an immediate threat. But the man who discovered the ammo is taking it very seriously. News Center 13's Kathy Sotero joins us now with the Live Eye with an update. Kathy?
Well, John, the ammunition was found here on this land. It's near Fort Des Moines. As far as we know, no other ammunition has been found, but the man who found it wants city officials to act seriously. When he found them almost 2 weeks ago, these cartridges were corroded. But after polishing them up a bit, Lowell LeSabre says he's almost certain these shells are of World War I vintage. He says some are still live and could be dangerous. But since notifying the city, he hasn't gotten a response.
If they've done anything, I haven't seen anything. My in-laws told me that they did see a sign up there finally, but I haven't seen it. But
this is the area on the city's south side where a bar found the ammo. The land here is under construction for a new housing development. When we first reported the story to you, the developer told us he had no idea that the cartridges had been found. Still, construction is going ahead without interruption. And the city has posted these no trespassing signs to keep people away. Officials from the city tell News Center 13 they are looking into the discovery, but don't find the cartridges to represent an immediate threat. Still, a bar says he hopes more will be done.
Well, I'd like to see the government come back in here and clean up their mess. They're the ones that started it, so they should be the one that cleans it up.
City officials say they will know later this week what direction they will take concerning this find. There's also some discussion whether there's some historic value to this find as well. John?
Okay, thank you. Kathy Sotero reporting live for us. A Court Avenue killing has now been turned over to a Polk County grand jury. 20-year-old Julius Bryan was shot and killed during a struggle with an off-duty sheriff's deputy. The shooting occurred last month near a Court Avenue bar. Police say Bryan and Deputy James Bennett got in a fight. A shot was fired. Bryan was killed. The grand jury could hand down indictments or take no action at all.
Some tense moments this afternoon at an Altoona truck stop. Fire broke out in the kitchen area of the restaurant. Investigators believe a grease trap over the stove started the fire. Officials say there was a lot of smoke, but very little damage. The restaurant was evacuated and one lady was taken to an area hospital with minor injuries. A 23-year-old Des Moines man remains hospitalized tonight with 2 broken legs after a fall at a Clive construction site. It happened at around 1 o'clock this afternoon. Craig Gradius fell 30 feet at the construction site on Northwest 131st Street. He's listed in fair condition at Iowa Methodist Medical Center. The accident is under investigation.
Well, you've heard the story before, but this time the characters are different. 6-year-old Michael Conaboy of Wisconsin had both of his arms ripped off this past Saturday in a farming accident. He and his big brother were riding on this Walker irrigation system when his clothes got caught in the machine. Doctors at Ramsey Medical Center in St. Paul reattached the limbs, but it'll be days before they know how successful their efforts will be.
Isn't he a little doll, too?
He really is.
I really hope he does well. What do you think of a longer school year for Des Moines students? Take part in our In Touch poll coming up.
Iowa's unresolved budget mess keeps the phone ringing in the governor's office.
And the political waters may be getting a bit choppy for Iowa's riverboat casinos. We'll have details when we come back.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Baker Square Bakery.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
True, you're introducing 19 new dishes.
In special portions for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yes.
Can you confirm the prices?
From $2.39 to $5.99. Yes,
Have you ever introduced a value menu this extensive before?
I don't believe any restaurant has.
Try our new Baker Square Deal meals. Just the right size, just the right price.
Now, who'd like some pie?
Our dream house will have a workshop.
Yeah, and a big family room.
And air conditioning we can really count on. Nothing but the best.
Must be true love.
Must be a Lennox.
Nobody gives you more value than LeSabre. Call LeSabre today. Ask for details on money-saving rebates of up to $700 on Lennox air conditioning systems, furnaces, and heat pumps. That's value from LeSabre, serving Des Moines since 1906.
Now, see your local dealer for special savings.
You're about to experience the